73% of high school students don't enjoy school. That is a scary number. It should be a scary number to you. Why should so much of our population be spending over a decade of their lives doing something that they don't enjoy at all? It just doesn't make sense. My name is John Fish, and I'm a Harvard student. And I want to share with you the intuitive way that I turned school from being an experience that I was not enjoying into one that I really enjoyed, and then back it up with some real psychology. So the intuitive way that I learned to enjoy school came from my dad, who is an amazing teacher, and what he taught me is to have fun in school by treating it like it's a game. So I come from a fairly high-level sports background. I've played sports all of my life. And so looking at classes as practice, time to hone my skills for the game, the tests, was very intuitive to me. It made a lot of sense, and it made school be enjoyable when I framed it that way. Now, over the past year, I've been reading a lot of positive psychology, and I've been taking classes on psychology here. And one name kept coming up for me, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He's a psychologist that pioneered the concept of flow, which is basically a highly focused mental state that leads to enjoyable experiences. So in his book, Flow, he breaks down the main principles that make an experience a flow experience. And I'm going to briefly summarize them because I want to mostly get to the recommendations. But if you haven't read Flow, I definitely recommend picking up a copy because it's a great read no matter who you are. So the key elements of flow experiences are these. There's a clear goal, something that you want to be doing with the task. There is a clear and immediate feedback mechanism that gives you a sense of progress towards that goal. Your skills match the challenges presented by the activity. You're concentrated on the activity at hand, and you feel like you're in control of what you're doing in order to achieve that goal. And there's a few other things that make a flow experience, but for that, you're gonna have to read the book, because these are the 5 things that we're going to be focusing on in this video. So with this in mind, it's pretty obvious to see why sports are enjoyable, because they're pretty much by definition a flow experience. The goal, winning, is obvious. The sense of feedback, the feedback mechanism, the score, again, fairly obvious. Games are only really fun if your opponent is at a similar skill level to you. In other words, if you're a house league team, you're not going to be playing a professional team because that would be no fun, and you're not going to play a team of toddlers because that'd be too easy, right? So the skills match the challenges. You are obviously concentrated on the task at hand. When you're on the soccer field, you're not on your phone texting your friends or whatever. And finally, you're fully in control of what you do. You are in control of whether you chase after the ball, whether you kick it and score. It's all on you. So it's also pretty obvious why school does not fit the definition of a flow experience. There's a clear goal kind of in that you want to get good grades, but when you think about the sense of progress towards that, the feedback mechanism is almost always delayed. You hand in a test and you have pretty much no idea about what your grade's going to be. It takes days or weeks. Same thing with homework. And furthermore, the skills don't always match the challenges. Sometimes things are way too hard, sometimes they're way too easy. So it can be overwhelming at times and it can be boring at other times. You're not always concentrated either. I mean, pretty much everyone's on their phone when they're in school doing work. It's pretty much the norm. And you also don't really feel like you're in control. So it's pretty obvious that school isn't a flow experience for most people, and I think that really shows why 73% of students don't enjoy it. But here's the promising thing. As a student, you can make school a flow experience, and here's how I recommend doing that. So the first thing and the most important thing that you can do is you can set goals outside of grades that you can evaluate yourself on. And that's the key thing, okay? So I'm going to give you an example. For my English class, one of my goals, and I set a few, but one of them was to get better at writing arguable theses. Okay, so when I write a thesis, I want it to be something that's actually arguable. That's not something that my teacher is going to tell me. That's something that I can figure out on my own. When I'm looking at my writing, I can say, is this arguable? And I can see whether I'm progressing or not. And it's immediate because I'm the one evaluating it. And just a side note, I apply this to my daily life too. I write down goals for every single day and I evaluate myself on whether or not I achieve them. I'm not nice to myself about it. I truly want to be honest because that's the only way that I'll actually see progress, because I'll know if I'm faking it. So set goals for everything that you're doing in school. They can be big macro goals that span an entire year or a semester, or they can be micro goals. In this class, I want to get better at X. The most important thing is that those goals, your progress towards them can be evaluated immediately. Okay, so it can't rely on things like grades, because that's usually not something that you can get immediately while you're actually in the task. So it needs to be something that if you're in the task, you can say, yes, I'm doing this well. So focus. Focus is a hard one in school, okay? Because you obviously need friends and you need social activities, right? I'm a huge advocate for balance. I don't think that anyone should be working all the time because that's super unrealistic and it's not a healthy life to be living. But the way that I deal with this is I put myself into school mode, where the only thing that I'm thinking about is the task in front of me, you know, what project I'm working on, the class, the note that I'm taking, and I tune out everything else. So I turn off my phone, I don't really talk to people while I'm doing that. I'm just in school. And then when I'm not in school mode, I just take that completely off. I don't think about school at all, and I let myself be present with my friends and enjoy that experience. And I think when you apply that as a strategy, you really find that you get more out of both experiences, as opposed to kind of taking this average and having overall mediocre experiences. When you're with friends, you're stressed about school, and when you're in school, you're thinking about your friends. Separating the two, I've found for me, has been tremendously healthy and beneficial for my relationships and for school. So practice putting yourself into school mode, practice putting yourself in a state where you are fully focused on the activity at hand, knowing that, you know, at lunch you'll go back on your phone, you'll hang out with your friends, you'll have a good time. You won't need to worry about school because you've been killing it in your classes and while you're doing homework. So finally, I think that the hardest thing about a flow experience to implement in school is control. Because it's very hard to feel control when you're doing the work that a teacher assigns you to do. But setting good goals will help with this, okay? So for example, if my goal is to write an arguable thesis or to get better at writing arguable theses, and my teacher assigns a video project, right? What I'm gonna be thinking about in that video project is not, how do I get an A on this? It's, how do I make a video that has an arguable thesis in this, okay? I'm changing the activity to fit my goals. And fun fact, when you have good goals like this, you will probably get better grades as well, because you're producing passionate and inspired work as opposed to stuff that you kind of just whipped out in half an hour or whatever because, you know, it wasn't very fun. If you're having fun with it, your teacher will obviously see that and it will benefit you tremendously. So I challenge you to reject grades as a feedback mechanism and to listen to your own internal heuristic about whether or not you're improving, whether or not you're succeeding in achieving your goals, okay? Because you will have a much more enjoyable experience if you do this, and to be honest, it'll help you with your grades as well. So hopefully if you're a student, you'll think about using these methods or maybe some other methods to make school into a flow experience. Because trust me, you don't want to spend a decade of your life or more, a lot more in some people's cases, sometimes 2 decades, doing something that is just not enjoyable. You want to make this an enjoyable experience for yourself. So teachers, here's a really important point for you. If you can turn teaching into a flow experience by applying the concepts of flow to your work, then your students are actually much more likely to experience flow as well, to enjoy school. It's due to a phenomenon known as emotional contagion, and it's actually been documented in formal psychology studies. So I highly recommend that you figure this out for yourself. And on that point, to anyone, you can really implement flow in any part of your life. I try and turn my life into a flow experience by setting big goals and little goals for every single day. And to be honest, when I started doing that, I started enjoying life a lot more. So if you're interested in reading more on the topic, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, some really, really interesting literature. There's a link in the description to this video. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate your support. If you got something out of this video or if you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like, maybe share it with your friends or your social network if you think that other people could benefit from this message. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. I'm John Fish, and I will see you next Friday.